Hi everybody, my name is Mahala and I'm the EELCorps member at EKU's Division of Natural Areas. Today is National Pollinator Week, which is the week where we celebrate and spread awareness about pollinators, which are the insects and animals that help with the process of plant reproduction. So today I'm going to be reading a book about one of the most popular pollinators, which is the bee. So I'm going to be reading The Bee Book by Charlotte Milner. So let's get started.
The Bee Book by Charlotte Milner. What's the buzz about bees? Bees have been on planet Earth for 100 million years. That's a lot longer than us humans, and even longer than some dinosaurs. They are important insects to our planet. This is because of the special relationship between bees and plants. But many bees are disappearing. Let's find out more about the world of bees and why there are fewer buzzing around. There are around 20,000 different species of bees. Some bees live with lots of other bees. They are usually called social bees. Other bees live on their own. These are called solitary bees. Bees can be found all over the world. Bees can be found on every continent except Antarctica. Some bees are very big. The Wallace's giant bee is the largest bee in the world, at just over 1.5 inches, 4 centimeters long. It can be found in Indonesia and lives in termite mounds. Some bees are very small. The dwarf bee is the world's smallest bee, at just 1/8 inch, 2 millimeters long. That's 20 times smaller than the Wallace's giant bee. You might need a magnifying glass to see this one. Some bees are angry. Killer bees escaped from a science experiment and have since spread across South and Central America. These bees get very defensive, stinging 10 times more often than other bees. Some bees can cook. When Japanese honeybees spot an enemy hornet, they form a hot bee ball by surrounding the dangerous suspect, and they cook it with their body heat. Some bees you might know already. Bumblebees are the fluffiest bees that you may have seen buzzing around your yard. But you might not know that the Old English word for bumblebee is Dumbledore. But the most famous bee is the honeybee. What is a honeybee? Like all bees, a honeybee is an insect. All insects have 6 legs and generally have 1 or 2 pairs of wings. Honeybees live together in a large group called a colony. Every colony contains a queen and worker bees. The colony lives in a nest. Some nests are wild, and some are kept by humans in beehives. From flowers, a honeybee collects pollen and nectar. Pollen is a powder made by flowers. Honeybees collect pollen to feed to baby bees. Nectar is a sweet, sticky liquid made by flowers. The honeybees love it. They use nectar to make honey. In the beehive, a honeybee makes beeswax and honey. Beeswax is used by honeybees to make hexagonal cells, which together make a honeycomb. Honeybees fill the comb cells with honey, pollen, and eggs. Honey is made from the collected nectar. Honeybees store honey in the comb cells and eat it when there are no available flowers. What does a honeybee do when it's warm? During the spring and summer, when there are lots of flowers around, honeybees are busy collecting nectar and pollen to feed the growing colony. Honeybees use the nectar to make honey in the nest, which will feed them through the late fall and winter. What do honeybees do when it's cold? Honeybees can't fly in the cold, so in the late fall and winter, they stay in the nest and eat the honey that was stored over the warmer months. They keep warm by huddling into a tight ball, with the queen taking the warmest spot at the center. The bee's knees. A honeybee's body is made up of 3 different sections. It has a head, a middle section called the thorax, and an end section, which is the abdomen. Its body parts make it very skilled at flying, finding flowers, and collecting nectar and pollen. A honeybee doesn't have a nose. Instead, it uses its antenna to smell as well as it tastes. A honeybee has 5 eyes. It has 2 big eyes, which are excellent for detecting flowers, and 3 small eyes, which detect light. The mouth has a long tongue that the honeybee uses like a straw to reach into the flower and suck up lots of nectar. Legs carry pollen to the nests. The front legs push pollen off the bee's body and onto its back legs. From there, it is packed into pollen baskets. A honeybee stores nectar in a honey's stomach while it is carrying it to the nest. Spiracles are tiny holes all over the bee's body that the bee uses to breathe through. Why do bees buzz? You've probably heard the buzz of a honeybee, but have you ever thought about what causes it to make that sound? For a honeybee to fly, its wings have to beat very fast. This makes vibrations in the air that we hear as a buzzing sound. For some bees, buzzing is very important. The bumblebee lets out a loud buzz while shaking its body and wings. This shakes pollen off flowers, allowing the bumblebee to collect more pollen to take back to the nest. The stinger. Honeybees use their stingers to protect the colony. Do all honeybees sting? No. Only the female honeybees can sting. The male bees are harmless. Does a honeybee die when it stings? Yes. When it stings a mammal, like us, a honeybee dies. Do you see how the stinger has a jagged surface? When a honeybee stings, the jagged spikes get stuck in the mammal's skin, and the stinger is pulled off the bee. A honeybee can't survive without a stinger. The queen, however, is lucky. Her stinger has a smooth surface, which allows her to sting, and sting again without causing her any harm at all. We love honeybees, and we love honey. Honey is really important to honeybees because they need it to survive the cold months. In fact, honey is so important that worker bees spend most of their lives making it. With the hard work of honeybees comes a sweet reward. Do you like to eat honey as much as the honeybees do? Let's find out how honeybees make honey. 1 teaspoon of honey equals the lifetime's work of 12 honeybees. 1 jar of honey equals 55,000 miles. It's 88,500 kilometers of flying. That's 1.5 times around the world. Where does honey come from? Some honeybees live and make honey in the wild. Others are domestic and have honey that is collected by humans. These honeybees are kept in beehives and are cared for by beekeepers. It is this special relationship between honeybees and beekeepers that allows us to find honey in the stores and on our breakfast tables. In the wild, honeybees make nests in rocks, hollow trees, and caves. Beekeepers keep their honeybees in beehives. These homes protect honeybees from the cold and rain, as well as keeping them cool in the summer. Inside the hives, honeybees build honeycombs and fill them with honey that can be collected by beekeepers and put into jars. Humans have been collecting honey for 13,000 years, which is a very long time. Jars of honey were even found in Egyptian tombs. The pharaoh Tutankhamun loved honey so much that he was buried with it. Meet the beekeepers. Why don't they get stung? Because they know the honeybee. Knowing about how honeybees behave and what they get up to inside the hive is important for keeping a healthy colony. Having this understanding allows the beekeeper to stay calm when checking the hive and collecting honey. A calm beekeeper means that the bees will be calm too, because they wear a bee suit. A bee suit has gloves, a hood, and a veil. Every part of a beekeeper needs to be covered so that they can't get stung. Because they use a smoker. A smoker pumps out smoke around the nest and calms the honeybees. The smell of smoke makes the bees think that there is a risk of fire, and so they start to eat honey in case they need to abandon the hive. Stinging is the last thing on the honeybee's mind if they think there might be a fire. What's happening in the hive? There are about 35,000 honeybees in a beehive. The colony has 3 types of bees: the queen, worker bees, and drones. Each type relies on the other to keep the colony healthy. The queen, female. How many? There is just one queen in a beehive. Her lifespan, 5 years. Her job, as the mother to most of the bees in a hive, the queen must lay eggs. She can lay 2,000 eggs every day. The worker, female. How many? Thousands. Her lifespan, 40 days. Her job, the worker bee has the most jobs to do, including cleaning and guarding the hive, foraging and making honey. The drone, male. How many? Hundreds during the summer. His lifespan, just a few weeks. His job, a drone bee doesn't do much work, but is needed in the summer to mate with a queen from another colony. In the fall, the drones are pushed out of the beehive. How do honeybees make honey? Number 1. Honeybees collect nectar from flowers with their tongues and store it in their honey stomachs. Number 2. These bees fly back into the hive and pass the nectar to another bee using their mouths. Number 3. This bee makes spit bubbles with the nectar until it turns into honey, which is then stored in wax cells. Number 4. The bees seal the honey in each cell with a wax lid on top to keep it fresh. The warm hive is the perfect place to make honey. Bees flap their wings to keep air flowing through the hive, keeping the colony dry. What makes bees so bee-rilliant? Not all bees make honey like the honeybee does, but all bees do play an important part in making much of the food that we eat. This is because bees pollinate plants. Some plants need pollination to make new plants and to grow seeds and fruit that we eat. Let's find out how bees pollinate plants. 1 in 3 mouthfuls of food that you eat has been made thanks to pollinators such as bees. What is pollination? The process of pollen moving from one flower to another is called pollination. Flowers need pollination to make seeds. Reproduction is when these seeds grow into new plants, but the flowers need help moving pollen. Sometimes this help comes from the wind, and sometimes it comes from animals such as bees. Bees are pollinators because they move pollen from flower to flower. How do bees pollinate plants? Number 1. A bee is attracted to a flower because of its bright petals and sweet smell. Number 2. A bee enters a flower to collect nectar and pollen. Pollen comes off the stamen part of a flower. Number 3. After visiting the flower, the bee's back, legs, and fluffy body are covered in pollen. Number 4. The bee visits another flower to collect even more pollen and nectar. Number 5. At the flower, the pollen falls off the bee's body and gets stuck on the sticky part of the flower, which is called the stigma. Number 6. The pollen enters the flower at the stigma and grows a tube to the ovary. Here it meets the egg. After the pollen has joined with the egg starts to become a seed. The seed can then grow into a new plant. Why do we need pollination? Bees pollinate plants, which helps them to reproduce and grow fruit. Many of these plants are crops growing on farms. These crops are collected and sold as food. Bees pollinate almond trees. Almonds are used to make cereal. Bees pollinate the coffee plant. This plant grows coffee beans, which are used to make coffee. Bees pollinate orange trees. These trees grow the fruit used to make orange juice. Bees pollinate strawberry plant. Strawberries are used to make jam. Breakfast is served. 1/3 of the food that we eat comes from crops pollinated by animals. And there's a lot more to know about the honeybee. Honeybees are very busy making honey and pollinating plants, but there's a lot more that goes on in a honeybee's world. What does the queen bee do? How is a honeybee born? Can honeybees talk to each other? Let's discover more about the life of a honeybee. How is a worker honeybee born? Day 0 through 3. The queen bee lays an egg. All honeybees start off as an egg. The queen lays the egg in comb cells that have been made by the worker bees. This gives each egg its own space to grow into a bee. Day 4 through 10. The egg hatches into a larva. A larva looks like a tiny white worm. Like a baby, a larva needs lots of food for it to grow. Nurse bees give it all the food it needs. Day 11 through 20. The larva spins a cocoon and becomes a pupa. When a larva has grown big enough, it spins a silk cocoon for protection as it becomes a pupa. A pupa starts to grow the body parts it needs to become an adult bee. Day 21. The pupa grows into an adult bee. When fully grown, the adult bee bites its way out of the comb cell. It is ready to start its busy life. The life of a worker bee. A female worker bee has lots of different jobs to do. She will be a housekeeper, a nurse, and a builder all in one lifetime. Day 1 through 2, cleaning. The worker bee cleans out the comb cell where she was born. Day 3 through 11, nursing. As a nurse bee, the worker has the job of feeding larvae. Nurse bees feed larvae royal jelly, pollen, and honey. If a larva is fed royal jelly for more than 3 days, it will grow into a queen bee. Day 12 through 17, building. The worker builds comb cells out of beeswax and helps it fill with honey. Day 18 through 21, guarding. The worker looks out for danger and guards the nest's entrance. Day 22 plus, foraging. For the rest of her life, she will collect nectar from flowers and bring it back to the nest. Who is Queen Bee? Even though we call her the queen, she isn't really in charge of all the bees in the nest. It is better to think of the queen bee as more of a supermom. This is because she is the mother of most of the bees in her nest. It is the queen's job to populate the colony by laying eggs that will hatch into the next generation of bees. What makes a honeybee a queen? The queen has a longer and more pointed body than the other bees in the colony. The queen has a special scent that the bees in the colony can detect. Her queen scent tells the colony that she is alive and healthy. This message is important because without a queen, a colony can't survive. Like a celebrity, the queen always has other worker bees surrounding her. These attendants feed her, groom her, and pass on her scent to the other bees in the nest. The queen can control whether an egg will hatch into a male drone bee or a female worker bee. What does the queen do? A queen is born. When a new queen is needed, the old queen lays an egg in a big cell called a queen cup. A queen egg needs more room to grow than the other eggs, and she needs to eat plenty of royal jelly. The fight to be queen. There can be only one queen in a nest, so if more than one queen is born, they fight by stinging each other. The survivor is crowned the queen. Meeting a drone. The queen takes a mating flight to meet a drone bee. She flies to where thousands of drone bees have gathered to meet her. When she returns to the nest, she is ready to start laying eggs. Egg laying. The queen spends her life laying eggs. She can lay as many as one egg every 20 seconds. If she slows down at laying eggs, then the colony might replace her with a new queen. How do honeybees talk to each other? Honeybees need to be able to tell each other where to find the best flowers, but honeybees can't talk. Instead, they dance. Bees communicate inside the hive using the waggle dance. When a honeybee does the waggle dance, she walks around in 2 loops and shakes her body. The angle of the dance tells the other bees the direction of the flowers. The dance also tells other bees how far away the flowers are. The longer a bee dances for, the farther away the flowers are from the hive. A short waggle dance means that the flowers are close. Honeybees carefully watch the waggle dancers' every move. They even notice the dancers' smell. They smell flowers to find the same type of flower that the dancer visited. What is a swarm? A large group of honeybees flying together is called a swarm. A swarm forms when the queen, along with some of the colony, leaves the old nest to find a new nest. A swarm is made up of one queen and up to 20,000 worker bees. Can you spot the queen in the swarm? A swarm occurs when a nest becomes overcrowded. Just before a new queen is born into the colony, the old queen gets ready to swarm with around half the worker bees. The old queen leaves with the swarm to find a new nest, while the new queen is left behind with the rest of the bees. The bees prepare for their long flight by eating lots of honey to give them energy. But the queen is not a strong flyer, so the swarm may have to stop along the way to let her rest. Even though a swarm of bees may look scary, they are not usually dangerous. As long as their hunt for a home doesn't get disturbed, they will not sting. Who eats honeybees? Birds. Bee eater, ruby-throated hummingbird, tyrant flycatcher, common grackle. Insects: Asian giant hornet, robber fly, bee wolf, dragonfly, Chinese mantis, bald-faced hornet. Spiders: six-spotted fishing spider, green lynx spider, goldenrod spider. Mammals: bears, least shrew, opossum, raccoon, honey badger, skunk. Reptiles and amphibians: anole, American toad, bullfrog, wood frog. These animals eat honeybees, and some, like the honey badger, love the sweet taste of honey. So what's the sting in the tail? Bees may be little insects, but they are very important to our environment. They have an effect on plants and animals all over the world, from a small flower to a big furry bear. But many types of bees are disappearing, and it's not because animals are eating them. It's a much bigger problem that's making it difficult for bees to survive. What's behind the problem of bee decline? Why are there fewer bees around? There is not just one cause. There are lots of reasons why many types of bees are in decline. When we think about the impact of these factors we put together, we can start to see why bees are in trouble. The factors. Number 1, climate change. Climate change can change the environment where bees and plants live, by making it hotter, for example. This makes it difficult for plants and bees to survive in the place where they are adapted to live. Number 2, loss of habitat. A bee's habitat is the place where it lives. Bees like to nest in areas where there are all sorts of wildflowers and grasses growing. But humans are destroying these habitats to build more roads, cities, and farmland. This means that there are fewer places for bees to live. Number 3, disease. Humans are moving different types of bees all over the world. Moving bees from place to place unnaturally can also move diseases, making many bees unhealthy. Number 4, pesticides. Pesticides are chemicals that are used on crops to help them grow and keep away insects that might eat the plants. But these chemicals can be dangerous for bees. If bees collect nectar and pollen from plants that are covered in pesticides, they can get very sick. What would we do without bees? The pantry would be empty. Without bees, we would risk losing some types of fruit and vegetables. We would risk losing many meat and dairy products too, because we feed farm animals with food that is made from pollinated plants. What would we have for breakfast? Without a variety of fruit and vegetables to choose from, our diet would be limited and unhealthy. We would probably eat a lot of more bread since bread can be produced without bees. We would have to find new ways to pollinate. Can you imagine having to do the job of a busy bee? In areas of China where there are few bees and other insect pollinators, people are pollinating their apple trees by hand. Workers climb up apple trees carrying small pots of pollen and brushes, which they use to pollinate each flower on the tree. Could robots do the job of a bee? Scientists are working on a robo-bee that will have the technology to pollinate, but we could never really replace bees. Robots and human workers are both very expensive ways to do something that nature does for free. Why do we need to help the bees? Not only are bees important to the production of food through pollination, but they also help support a huge variety of wildlife. With fewer bees, other plants and animals in the environment could be in trouble too. Buzzing bees spend their days pollinating plants. These plants include crops such as fruit and vegetables. With fewer bees, there could be fewer fruits and vegetables. Food could become more expensive. By pollinating plants, the bees help wildflowers. Mammals rely on areas of wildflowers as places to live and find food. Wildflowers give insects a home too. Birds nest in areas with wildflowers and eat insects, seeds, and berries. What can you do to help? Plant bee-friendly plants. The bees will thank you for planting flowers rich in nectar and pollen. Wildflowers are the most suitable for bees, but this doesn't mean you have to go planting weeds. Find out what to plant on the next page. Be calm. Don't be scared of bees. If a bee flies near you, then stay calm and move away slowly. It will soon realize you are not a flower and fly away. Be in the know. Become a bee scientist by learning more about bees. Reading this book is a good start, but there's a lot more to find out about different types of bees. Get outdoors and watch the bees at work. What will you discover? Read the word. Bringing people together in your school or community could really help the bees. You could suggest a project to plant more bee-friendly plants in public spaces or make bee hotels with your class. Make a bee hotel. Solitary bees like to nest in small holes. Give these bees a 5-star place to stay by making a bee hotel. You will need bamboo stems, enough to fill the inside of the bottle, a plastic drink bottle, 2 liter, and twine. Here's how. Number 1. Cut off both ends of the plastic bottle with the help of an adult. Number 2. Trim the bamboo sticks to the same length as the bottle. You'll need an adult to help again. Number 3. Pack as much bamboo as will fit into the bottle. You could also fit it with sticks, pine cones, and bark. Number 4. Tie twine tightly around both ends of the bottle. Number 5. Tie each end of a new piece of twine to the 2 twine loops. Make the string long enough for the bottle to hang. Number 6. Hang the bee hotel on a fence or wall outdoors 1 yard above the ground. Make sure the bee hotel is level and secure. Have you seen a carpenter bee visiting your hotel? Bees like their hotels to be in sunny spots near grass and flowers. Keep checking on your bee hotel to see which different types of bees have checked in. They will be nesting in the hollow stems of the bamboo. Have a bee-friendly garden. Bees love gardens that are full of flowers and different plants with plenty of nectar and pollen. Here are a few tips on how you can help bees by making some changes in your garden. Get people outdoors. You might need some help with buying new plants and planting them in your garden, so ask family and friends to help. Everyone will enjoy getting outdoors. Plant lots of flowers. Bees like it when there are lots of different flowers with strong scents. If you don't have a garden, you could try planting a window box or hanging basket. Love the weeds. Let your garden be on the wild side. Bees love wildflowers like dandelions and clover, so don't pull it out all the weeds and don't mow the grass too often. Avoid using chemicals. Pesticides and other gardening products might promise to make your garden perfect, but they can be harmful to bees. You can still have a beautiful garden without using chemicals. What to plant for the spring? Crocus, snowdrop, and iris. What to plant for the summer? Lavender, mint, cornflower. What to plant for the fall? Sunflower, sedum, and ivy. The be-all and end-all. It's sad to lose any animal, but to lose bees would be to lose nature's hardest worker. Bees are responsible for so much more than making honey. So let's appreciate our fuzzy friends by doing what we can to help them. Keep bumbling on about the bees because they really do matter.
I hope you all enjoyed the book and you learned all kinds of facts about bees and pollination. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.